Good evening and welcome to the West Seneca School Board meeting. We'd like to start with the pledge, so Mr. Seabird, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and welcome to the board meeting again. Hope everybody is making their plans for a small Thanksgiving dinner gathering, just so that the governor doesn't put us into the red zone. That's not where we want to be, and looks like, unfortunately, we may be headed that way. So we'll start with the superintendent's report. Mr. Bystrat.
Thank you, Ms. Bears. Good evening, everyone. So just a couple updates, really, just about the current state of the state here. So I know Ms. Bears just mentioned the whole idea of testing and, kind of what that means and, different colored zones and everything. So just a reminder, essentially right now we are in an orange zone. I know the governor did mention that several areas within Western New York or Erie County could be moved into a red zone. For our intents and purposes, as far as the school district is concerned, we are already in a remote model of instruction right now. So in terms of our ability to continue that model, that's really not going to be affected if we do go into a red zone. Our teachers are still going to be able to teach. The most up-to-date guidance that we have from the State Department of Health says that even if we need to have people in our buildings, we can still do that in a red zone, the same that we could do in a orange zone, but they do recommend trying to decrease density to the extent possible. So as far as that is concerned. And just another update on our testing. So we did apply for our limited service laboratory license through the New York State Department of Health. We applied for that last Tuesday. Still waiting to hear back. Typically, that process takes about 3 weeks for the Department of Health to process. I did hear that they were trying to put school districts up the list, or up the ladder, I should say, in terms of getting them their licenses a little bit sooner, just given the circumstances. Given the orange or a red scenario, I'm not sure that's going to be the best, that's going to make much of a difference in terms of our students, because that's a pretty high percentage rate. And when you're talking about increasing rates of infection, we would more probably be looking at some sort of testing if we were in maybe like a yellow zone and maybe seeing decreasing numbers. So, but as everybody knows through our most recent communications, through the holidays at least, we're going to be in a fully remote model of instruction. That said, I will say that our teachers Thursday, Friday, today, and tomorrow have been participating in some staff development pertaining to our live casting model. So we're working with Erie One BOCES, and they're doing just some PD training, as well as our tech integrator Tori Jones has been working with some of our staff as well and creating videos and things just to help people prepare for the whole live casting, where we're teaching to groups of students right in front of you and two groups of students that might be on your Chromebook or remotely accessing their services. So we're still preparing for that. If you were to go to some of our elementary buildings, for instance, right now, like Clinton Street, you'd see signage all over the place. People really were prepared. We still are moving in that direction, getting ready for when we do resume in-person instruction. And I will say that over the next couple of weeks, we plan to announce a tentative schedule into January, basically kind of outlining our phase back in approach. Also, we just communicated again today, food service, an update on our food service delivery program. So just at the beginning of the school year, when we first started off, our plan from the start was to be able to bring students back into session for their in-person learning. And our plan was, as we did that, to be able to phase out the delivery to our families. So that wasn't something that we'd be able to sustain the entire year. We did do it obviously for a few months. So we are moving to actually it's similar to the model that we had in place last year. So we have, instead of 2 though, we have 4 grab-and-go sites. Anybody 18 years or younger can access these to get food. We've been doing it a couple of days a week and giving people multiple meals in one day as opposed to doing it every day. Today, too, we're going to do a later afternoon option as well to try to maybe work in line with some parents' work schedules, might be a little more conducive to the work schedules. We've seen a few other districts that are piloting this, so we're going to try it as well. And also, we're still going to be sending out to a few of our developments in the area as well that we have listed in our the update that we just sent out today. If a parent or a family is having a difficulty accessing any of these sites, I just urge you to contact our food services department, and we'll work with you to ensure that you can still get access to your meals. And aside from that, I just want to say Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Okay, thank you. And we have one presentation tonight, and that's by Rose Godwin, the supervisor of our print media services. So if you've been receiving packets from, especially at the elementary level, of all materials for the students to work on, Rose is the one that gets these all together. So if you want to come up and speak and let us know what's going on in your department.
I can move this to the right.
You can.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm not sure if you received the little, just note I had on what we were gonna talk about. Okay. So basically, number one, I just wanna thank everybody for everything. I think as, you know, as a parent in the district, I'm really impressed with everything we're trying to do and make happen and, you know, do the best we can at that. And also from a perspective of being a staff member, I think, you know, the information, the support is great, and I'm thankful for that. So basically, the last time I saw most of you, Jody, I don't think we've ever met. I'm Rose. Nice to meet you. We spoke about what was going on. That was back in March, kind of what our goals were going into the, you know, spring, summer, fall, and then everything drastically took a turn. So basically, we've been doing everything we spoke about then, and sometimes in warp speed, and working on our Print Shop Pro, which was and is a huge undertaking and a big process that will hopefully be piloting by the middle, right before or close to, before the holiday or close to the first of the year. So we've been doing all the data collection and meeting for hours and hours via Zoom, building the website. So each individual part of the process takes one-on-one time to build, and once it's done, it will be amazing, but it is a very tedious task. Every color paper, weight of paper, size, you know, everything that we do, and you don't realize it, you know, we do it every day, but to make it work and build it from the bottom, it's extremely difficult. So basically, the meetings that we are, that I have had, they're in 2-hour increments, basically just building. We did the data collection. This is all going back, into December and January of last year, but the more recent ones are, you know, how do we want it to appear, the accessibility for people that have visual or hearing impairments, and just going through each of the training points on my perspective, the back end and also the user end. So where, you know, where are people going to click? Where are they going to find what they need to order specific materials, whether it be a mailing, a postcard, a, you know, final exam, a midterm, a study guide, things like that. So I have some training, not this week, but going into next week, like I said, 2-hour increments, and then it'll go into training my staff, choosing a pilot group, which will probably be, you know, principals and directors and things like that, to make sure that that process will work smoothly. And that also takes a lot to implement the users. You know, we use our email, but who is getting access to what? Because we don't want to bombard a math teacher with all of the health forms that a nurse will utilize and things like that. So that's definitely been a process. But again, will pay off tremendously. So other than that, our staff has been amazing, our team working to, you know, to do everything we can. Hopefully our deliveries have been going out daily. I think Grounds hired the other part-time half to the delivery. They have a guy named Pat now. He works half the day, and I believe they hired someone else, so hopefully that can pick up the back end, because Pat's done by 1. So if we have materials to go to buildings and we don't have someone to bring them, that creates a little bit of a lag. And we had so much material leaving and being half done that it was hard to get it all to the buildings when everyone needed it, especially with, you know, not having everyone staffed in the beginning and things like that. Usually we're working on materials for September in February and March. So with the unknown of what people were gonna be teaching, what materials they were gonna need, it really took us quite a bit of time to get caught up to where we needed to be, but I think we definitely are there and then some, and also working with the day-to-day, you know, things are changing and people don't know exactly what they need as well. So, you know, from my perspective on that, I think we've caught up to a good, we're in a good spot. I added some pictures. I don't know if you guys want to take a look. This is just one page of the community ed, which we haven't done community ed in our schools. That's enough paper for one page of the normally 10 pages that are in a book. I feel like when you think of the logistics of how something happens, it's hard to see it, you know, in your head if you don't see it in operation, I guess. So to print that book, we use one of these 2-color presses, which I know you guys took a little tour back in December of last year, but I wasn't there. So just to kind of explain a few of the things, and if you have any questions, feel free to pop in. That's our 3-hole punch, which is a drill with a little foot pedal there. That's just 11 or 12,000 envelopes. So if you get the perspective on how many are used in a specific mailing, it's quite a lot. We just did report cards for the secondary students. They'll be mailed out tomorrow. And that was, you know, give or take 3,800-ish that were going out. So we like to pre-print the logos and things on them just to have that prepared. That's our automatic punch. So if you look at a coiled book, that will take and die cut the edge of the paper so that a coil can go through it. That's technically automatic, but someone has to stand there usually while printing to be able to help it not get balled up at the end there. Those are some back sides of paper. When you have a sheet of paper that's a front and a back, it has to go through the press once and then again. So those are getting ready to go back on the press to be printed. Same thing there. That's just a little look at the shelf, you know, with some printing back sides and fronts there. That's just a little, that's our table of horror, maybe you could call it. That's a whole lot of work in various stages of completion. So, you know, the time that it takes to print and then print the backs, collate, punch, then 3-hole punch, coil, pack it up to each building. It's a lot. That's the other side of the table, things that need to be collated so that they can collated or stapled. And that's the back end there as well, various stages of work. Those are one book. That's 4 different sections that have to get married together and then jogged and then punched. Lots and lots of steps. That's our collator. That's one tower of the 3 towers of the collator that takes one of each of those sheets and kind of marries them together to create the books. That's another look at the envelopes. The table on various days. Those are some flashcards for the grade 3 students, multiplication, so they can work on those at home. That's our folder where we fold some of the report cards or some mailings that go home. And that's a look at right now how our process is when we're sending work from our shop to the schools. So we have a label on there, what school it is, what year it is, and what the actual job is. Always on a fluorescent sticker. Hopefully not hopefully, it will happen when this Print Shop Pro is up. It will have a barcode, and whoever our delivery person is going to scan that barcode. And it's like your FedEx, your UPS, even your USPS now, where they will know it has left me and it is coming to you or whoever that might be, to eliminate that unknown from when it's from me to custodial to whatever classroom that is needed. So, but that's a look at, you know, we kind of sort by school and label those accordingly. That's a look at 3 of our 1-color presses. Those 3 are running simultaneously all day, every day. Usually if one person pops in at the end of the day, they're like, wow, it's so quiet. Why? because nobody is used to that. Those are running nonstop in order to keep up with the work that, you know, that's needed. That's just a little wall of materials that are often asked for, whether it be special ed or a student that has a need, you know, handwriting or multiplication, things that have either come back or have been out of use, but might be needed for other students that have a need. So we keep that, and I keep a file as to how many we have on hand. So if a specific teacher calls and has a need for that, we can pull it, and you don't have to reprint from the press, you know, a specific job that might be needed. So that's our paper cutter near the hole punch there that can cut up to 23 by 35 paper down to any size we need. We do index cards for the teachers to give to students for, you know, study tool or writing down definitions, things like that. So they usually order various colors once a year, and we provide that, cut that paper there. Those are some of the first health questionnaires there, John, on the butcher block behind the paper cutter. We've been trying to keep up to date with the ever-changing questions so that everyone can check in and be safe and healthy. There's another look at the table with a different job on there. Oh, and then we're back to, oh, that's some writing paper for the younger kids. We do little mini books, regular writing paper. So that's just a little glimpse into our day-to-day. I don't know if you guys have any questions for me or anything.
Could you walk me through something? Let's say a school wants 300 calendars, all right? They come to you, but they can also go to another vendor, right?
They could.
Okay, so you have to be competitive. Let's say, for example, you tell them it's 30 bucks a calendar, they can go outside for 10, they're probably gonna go outside for 10. So
Right.
you have to be competitive with your pricing, and when they do pay for it, it comes out of their budget into your department, correct? So there's a movement of money from one department to another, to the print shop.
As of
For the
right now,
printing.
there is not. So we have done bids and outsource, you know, cost analysis of many jobs. Most of them use a lot of laser printing, not necessarily offset, and we do a combination of both. So right now, I think we were having, there were questions about the agendas. I think for a while there, West Middle wasn't using our service, and they were paying an astronomical cost. So we are a service to the district, so we have a budget that is our own. However, everything I buy is either at or below state contract pricing. And we, you know, when we do the annual paper bid, that is at the lowest price we can get it. We've figured in man hours, labor hours, how much things will cost, and it is always less than going to an outside vendor. Any repair and service people that have come in are, because we work multitasking, so if somebody is on that punch, they're also running their press at the same time or cutting at the same time, coiling at the same time. So there's multiple things that are happening, whereas when you are charged for an item, it is by the item, not by, even if they can, you know, assume your brakes on a car, it might be 4 labor hours, but it only takes them 2. You're paying them the 4 hours. That's not really how we operate, because we do as much as we can in the day within that time. So our salary and our budget is all within that.
So would you say from year to year that it's pretty typical, the printing that you do? I mean, for musicals, plays, educational material, there's no huge upswing, there's no downturn. It's pretty static. What I'm
Not
getting
this
at, there's
year.
no surprises, what I'm getting at, for the most part.
Well, it depends. There might be mailings that are, you know, giving information that is not within that parameter of what we would normally do. This year, for instance, we did West Middle's agenda, not East Middle's agenda. Last year, we found out very late in August that we were doing East Middle, so that's something that you have room in your budget. And the cost of things, no matter what, just like in your day-to-day food, you know, your bills are going up, so.
So when you
paper-
say that you didn't print East Middle, they went to an outside vendor?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Okay.
So then, for some reason, they costed that job out and found somebody cheaper? Or
That I don't
there's a
know.
time constraint?
Can I interrupt though? It wouldn't be cheaper because it doesn't come out of their budget to do it in-house. So why would they have not done it in-house? Like, why are we, I mean, I'm not gonna use this term, but why would we even allow that if there's a cost to hire outside, but it's free technically to them in-house?
Well, there's got to be a movement of money from one department to the next.
Is there?
What there is one cost associated with what I outsource, which is the design.
Right.
And that is always much
No,
cheaper.
just to clarify what Pete's asking is, if I'm, let's just say I'm Potter's school, and I wanna get a planner, I'm gonna outsource, and I'm gonna pay $8 a planner.
Right.
So I have to, somehow, $8 is gonna come out of my budget at Potter's one way or another.
Right.
If I have you do it, no money comes out of my budget at Potter's.
Correct, because we are a service for the
Correct.
district.
Okay, that's why I just wanted to make sure that Pete and I were on the same page. So then why would someone choose to go outside, or why would we allow that? Not that I'm saying there's,
Yeah.
I don't mean to sound that way, like, why would we allow it, but why would we let, like, who went outside?
I know East Middle has gone outside of the district,
So-
and we pay for it as a PTO.
I was just gonna
Okay,
say,
so that
sometimes the
would be-
PTA, and
Okay.
actually, when I was at West Middle, there were times in the PTA, even when we were utilizing the district service, they would,
So-
PTA would pick up the cost of the design,
Okay,
essentially.
Right.
So we're working with the design.
So the difference would be maybe like, I remember back when Kathy Brockman was running Winchester, and she would not allow us to do in-district because it was the Leader and Me planners, and that was all probably licensed material, would
That
be
could
my
be.
guess. So that would be a reason maybe to,
That could be.
Go outside
We have
because-
done, this year, the only one we didn't do was East Middle.
okay,
So, I mean, time definitely, there was a little bit of a lag. I think everybody got them by the first or second week besides East Senior because they weren't going to order it and then they did. But, like you said, it is a service. That's what we're there for. The only thing, I lied when I said we only outsource the,
Artwork?
artwork. The covers are laminated through a third party as well because of time. So everything else is printed. Actually, I brought these to show you similarly to the photos, how we kind of go about something like this. So these are our polyester plates that are used in offset printing on those two color machines. So we go from the bare bones of whatever file is provided. We have all the logos, things like that, the colors, but these are what go on our presses. So on a job similar to like this West planner, this is what's called 4-up. So there's 4 sheets to 1 page. So the rough draft before it gets collated, cut, punched, and coiled is this. So this is kind of a sample of, before it gets finished, it's 4 sheets back and front, or 4 up on a page, and then cut. Personally, I think that we were a better option, cost and quality, because we can go up to the minute. I know there's been some schools that say, hey, a staff member changed, or a policy changed. Can we get that changed? And we absolutely do that. We have specific dates and information. This year was not because of the situation. We didn't want to publish things that were not for sure. But working in the district for the district, it's easier to say, hey, we need to get this done, than a third party saying, you'll get it when we're finished with it. It's more, I guess, personal to have it in the hands of the students and the needs met, from my perspective.
So when you get a print job, you don't have an associated cost with that? Well, what it would cost?
I can cost that, and I have before, the staff member that worked in my position did before as well. Paper, supplies, man hours, depending on who that is, and that would be our cost, because, depending on who would do the labor, people make different amounts of money.
Well, I'm also assuming you're not buying paper as you're getting
No,
in.
we stock paper, we
Right.
do an order each year with the entire district, so it winds up being, I think, we get 4 truckloads of white paper throughout the district, and we get colored paper, and then I usually have to order more for my shop, but when you order it in one delivery or, you know, by truckload, it's way less expensive. So, and right now, to be able to get paper on demand, you're definitely not getting that. We had a difficult time making this order happen because mills are not working. There wasn't a need. So, and even in the WB Mason, who was awarded the bid this year, their staffing was very difficult on their end and ours as well to work with.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, there's no budget when it comes to printing. You could print, in 1 year, we could print 1 million documents, or we could print 4.
Right.
There's no budget. What I'm getting at, not every school has a printing budget or a budget that they can pull and accommodate that cost.
No.
Yeah, if you want something printed, typically speaking, you don't want to.
It just gets done.
Yeah, if I'm a teacher, I'm not gonna, if I need 20 copies of something, I'm not gonna use a print shop. Usually it's like 500 copies or minimum or something
Right.
like that.
Right.
We've kind of streamlined that through our curriculum.
I'm just saying
cabinet.
these
Right.
the larger, the booklets and that,
Yeah.
you know, there's certainly a cost. There's an internal cost that we
Right.
have, and then there's the vendor cost, which apparently we do use vendors at some point.
Oh, yeah, sometimes, depending on, like, for design and things like that, or as she talked about laminated, like the front cover of
Right.
like, the packages.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying, but that's you going to an outside source. I'm saying
From-
this, the school, in my scenario, you know, having calendars printed for $10 instead of your quote-unquote 30.
Right.
So we do go outside district to print for whatever reason. Not everything is printed in-house.
It's either, from my perspective, it's, if it's a sign, a banner, something that we are not capable of doing, more often than not, someone will call us at the shop, usually me, and say, is this possible? Can you do this? And if I can't help them, I will do my best to either, you know, send them to a vendor that I know, that I've used before, tell them maybe, you know, someone in a different building with a higher efficiency or larger device, but usually if it's something small, it's done in-house in the actual buildings, and mostly everything else that I know of is done through us.
So when you do those planners, let's say for one of the high schools, you know how much labor went into it, you know how much material went into it.
Yes.
Okay.
Like I have invoices for the outsourcing of the graphics, which is what the school is responsible for paying. That's all they pay. And because I had to outsource that.
Right.
I have the amount of covers that I had laminated, how much it is per cost for each cover, the coils.
So
I
that
buy in
end of it,
bulk.
which you couldn't do, comes out of the school's budget.
That comes out of the budget for the print
Comes out,
shop.
okay.
All of that comes out of the print shops.
No, but I think, Peter, you're asking, like, for instance, if somebody, like, design costs, for instance, if we have to use like a graphic designer, that
Right.
is something, like, when I was at West Middle as a principal.
But since you
yeah.
can't laminate something, that's your cost.
Right, and we can laminate, just the volume is not, it's not cost effective
No, I
for us to do that, yeah.
So if we have repeat orders, we store the negative and then just pull it out and burn it and use it for later? Or do we reshoot everything again on the same thing?
Well, we use copiers now, not a plate maker.
Okay.
So that's why the curriculum cabinet has played such a huge part in our efficiency, because if there is something ordered for math, Franco has his hands in it. If it's ELA, Kim and Holly have their hands in it. They know what's happening so that if we're printing it district-wide, we're printing it once. You know, that cuts down on the cost of the plates, because if one school ordered 100 and another school ordered 100, you're making these paper or polyester plates each time you're printing, that's a cost. That's why it's not effective for us to tell someone you need 15 copies or 10 copies, we'll print it, because the cost of us printing it would be more expensive for them just to print that very small amount in-house.
So let's say you print something and some kids' names are printed incorrectly and the school has to do it again. You take on that extra cost then. Let's say you have to print it twice. To correct, you know, incorrect names or something like that, or incorrect, whatever it is.
Yes,
So, okay. So that doesn't come out, that comes out of your budget then?
Correct, because we are that service for the district. I think there was some point where there was a postal budget, so say eighth grade at West Middle wanted to send a mailing to their students, families. And then East Middle and West Middle also wanted to. Then we were splitting the cost, trying to figure out which school, and it wasn't down the middle because West Middle has more students. So now there is a postal budget that is, I request funds from to go into the post office account where the mailings come from. I think some of the schools do minor mailings that are under 200 pieces, which is something that I don't qualify for a discount. So they do that in-house, but the money and the receipts and everything for each mailing are outlined there. And then I transfer all of this information, be it the person who ordered it, the date they ordered it, the date it was completed, how much colored paper, how many, if it was stapled, if it was hole punched, coiled, bound, and then that accounts for all of that. So at any time, if I wanted to go in and say, how much yellow paper did we use today from July 1st to June 30th, I could give you a count of that.
So at the end of the year, you can't say, the print shop, you know, I know it's not revenue, but made X. We printed so much for all these schools and we have X. Last year, we printed $1 million worth of documents. Last year, we printed 750,000. So we know next year possibly that might 1.2 or something like that.
Well,
You don't,
I have all of that data. So I have my annual order of what I paid for paper, the coiling, again, I have that.
so you're going on material, how much material you're running through.
And we could do labor too. I don't think that I have the appropriate, I don't think that I should or should ask my staff what they make per hour and ask them how that, I use a gross number based on the contract if I'm doing something that is labor hours.
Well, as far as, yeah, labor.
Yeah,
hours.
so I can, it's not difficult to figure out those numbers in terms of the quantity of materials that we've done from year to year. I have accurate totals that we keep, meticulous ones,
Something to keep in
actually.
mind though too is remember if they're doing more than one thing at a time, so.
Absolutely,
dividing
so
that out
that's
so
where the
that- well,
labor,
that could skew
you're
it a little bit,
basically
but yeah.
cutting that in half.
Now, you use one permit number. It's our district permit number, is that correct?
Yeah, 3317 is our,
Yeah. And then.
permit
you
number.
have to have a minimum of 200.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what happens if there's a smaller mailing, then you have to use the postage, you know?
Well,
5
it's
cents.
still a discount, so it's still a
Okay.
discount, but it goes to the business office, and I think it was Ellen, I believe she retired, I'm not sure who it is now, because we don't really have to use that.
Yeah.
So for instance, for say it's a mailing that's a one-page trifold mailing, and it's going to everybody, but it's specific information for each school, I will compile that list and make it be 5,000 pieces,
Yeah.
address each one separately, but mail it all together in order to get that
Permit,
discount.
yeah, okay.
And the more pieces you have, the less expensive it is. So
Yeah.
even though we are doing our report card envelopes or report cards, first-class mail, because we're sending multiple schools together, we get a large discount on that, because the more pieces, the more work you do for the post office, the less money it is for
That's
you.
right.
You know, the person
Under
paying.
one account.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's
We
why it's
also,
important.
okay, we also have now a business reply mail account, which is for things coming back to us. So you prepay and have money in an account for that. And if we needed to send, like we did for the technology survey this year, we sent it to all families to see if they had internet access, if they were able to get it, if it was stable, things like that. We sent the survey out, and in the envelope, it was the survey with an envelope to return it, so they didn't have to pay that postage. Then they would be more likely to send it back, especially the ones that we really needed to know what their needs were. So we sent that out district-wide, and then they come back to the post office or get picked up and went to Scott and Renee, and they, figured out who needed what. So we now have that. Since the budget vote, we were able to implement that new permit. It has to be separate and a separate amount of funds because you have to have money in there in order to be charged back for each piece. So,
Can I ask, I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
absolutely.
Now that everyone in Chromebooks and everyone's getting used to technology, do you think that we cut back on some of that paper?
I actually think it is more, to be honest. I feel like they want the kids writing still. They want them showing their work in math, having the tools, and I've heard that a lot from my perspective in my circle of people that I know, what a great tool it is. Even the agendas for the kids to day write down what they're supposed to do, when something is due, but to have that, practice in handwriting, practice with their showing their work, I think that has been a great tool to assist with, with the Chromebooks.
Yeah, Mary, it's a good question you're asking, and I think, at the end of the day, too, remember, we also transitioned to the Chromebooks, in kind of an unusual time, too, so there's always going to be a need to have paper products for people to be able to write, and, we just, honestly, over the past few years, started implementing a new handwriting program, so that's going to be important for us to continue with, and like you said, with math and being able to show your work and stuff, but the Chromebooks are definitely going to help us to realize, I think, some new things. It's not just a replacement of existing or converting, like, we used to do this on paper, now we do it on the Chromebook. I think it'll lead to new things happening. And with some of the benefit of the Chromebooks too, it allows students to collaborate a little differently too as they're doing some of their work as well. So, in some areas we might use a little less paper, but I think in other areas it's still always going to be a necessity. Yeah. So it's a good question though.
Even the, like I was saying earlier with the photo, the kindergarten kids, they have a booklet of blank paper because they're not writing, it doesn't have lines. It's their daily draw or pre-K kids, draw what you did today. And it's the idea of the first stages of writing. Draw a picture, sometimes they write their name or, then they move on and transition to one that has big wide lines. And they do that at the second half of the year. And I think that was something a lot of people were concerned about. We're not going to know or remember how to write, or we just started learning cursive, and how are we going to keep that? So, all of those handwriting books did go to all of the students, the math flashcards, as we talked about, letter and word cards, to just see the word. You can see it on a computer screen, but if you're looking at a paper with 12 words on it, it's not the same as looking at each word individually, in a flashcard form. So, the visually impaired, there was some students in math that really needed those, and we've continually done those. I think that's something that they can maximize their screen or zoom in, but when you want to see the whole page and see the whole picture, we were able to put, some 8.5 by 11 books into 11 by 17 form for those students with those needs, and coil them. It wasn't necessarily on the side like the regular books, more so on the top, but I made sure the colors were the same and the pages were labeled the same, so if a teacher's referencing that specific page, they're able to get where they need to get, without struggling to see it. So, yeah.
Report cards? Can those just be on Power School now instead of being mailed out?
You would be shocked. Like when I used to work with our school counselors, people want the piece of paper. We actually kind of shifted to that for a little while. I know when I'll speak for West Middle. Yeah, we're trying to we'd mail out like 70 of them, per marking period, whatever, but the number of times that we would talk to like our school counselors or teachers just say, boy, parents, they want the hard copy of this. They're more likely to look at it. So that's one thing we thought the juice might be worth the squeeze on actually sending them out.
And actually, I think what happened, we used to do just quarter 4. So those parents would have it, the year ended.
Yeah.
Then it went to second and fourth quarter because of that request. But this quarter, we did it because people were having issues with the Power School app.
Yeah.
But I think that having they're not used to using the desktop version, and the application wasn't allowing them to see their report cards. So for the
Okay, So in
secondary,
a non-COVID year, we do halfway and.
yeah,
okay.
second and fourth,
Well, That's
yes.
a nice in the middle kind of.
And eventually, I think it'll transition to just the digital, but it was funny, just and I shouldn't say
Yeah.
funny, but the number of people that really just, boy, put it right there in their face. It's still available in Power School for them to be, the parent portal for them to be able to go look at it, but
You know, I used
Yeah.
to think like those were important, like
Yeah.
with when I was a kid, but no one's ever asked for them as an adult. They've never said, Ed, where's your report cards? And I have them all.
Keep them all.
I know.
who's
Someday
sending them
I-
to you, Ed?
Bring them next month.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that that was a highly requested, you know, need for parents to actually see that. Not to mention, you can look at Power School all day long, but you're looking at the day-to-day, I feel like, and parents want to have a reflection of what that first quarter was and see where they're at to be able to assess and evaluate, you know, how things are going.
I don't want to turn this into it, just throwing it. I think the other one I brought up before was the bus thing. Remember how the bus cards would come? We didn't do bus cards this year, did we?
They actually did go out
Well, I know.
Yeah.
in an
Oh, they did
envelope.
go out.
In an envelope,
Okay.
yeah.
So we don't, as I brought about, like, why do we have to mail these bus cards anymore if everyone has the Power School and the.
But not everybody has
Yeah.
internet access and not everybody uses.
But now every one of our students does, right?
Right, but if it's in the summer and they haven't been issued a Chromebook.
In
or
some
aren't a
cases, it's
parent-
another manner of engagement,
Okay.
honestly.
Yeah.
It's,
I'm just, I think I
Yeah,
brought that up.
just to kind of, I mean, we hang them on the board in our house just to make sure, but,
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, yeah, I get,
And
I
that
just remember
is-
them all coming out and then like buses changing, like 3 or 4 times, like, you can't send the cards out the day before school starts.
right. Well,
So-
we pull that data very late, and then if you have more kids enrolling and things are changing, then things need to change. But, you know, I feel like if you have 7,000 students and, you know, even if it's 6,500 that are accurate with what the transportation department's been able to navigate through, I think that, you know, the others, if they have to change, hopefully get notified, you know, this same way, but in a separate mailing or phone call, just to kind of, because you can't have 7,000 people asking.
I'll tell you what I am impressed with is I can do the math here. I have 5 kids in school, and I do not get 5 calendar. Like back when my kids first started, I used to get like 3. Like Eddie and Caitlin were in first and kindergarten, and I would get the general copy of the calendar. Then I would get Eddie, parent guardian event, parent guardian of Caitlin, I'm really impressed with how very unduplicated everything is now. That had to have been a huge undertaking.
Well, I feel like depending on the schools too, if you have a primary student and then a secondary student, it's difficult for them to maybe know where each person is. In the mailing perspective, when I pull a list, I spend the time to eliminate duplicates because I had 4 students, and it might take a little more time, but when you see that being mailed home 4 times and you wonder why did this happen and who did it, I would much rather eliminate that. Certainly if it's personal information, if it's an e-senior kid and it's a t-shirt, they need to have 2 order forms. If it's a military opt-out and you have 2 students and one you might want to opt out and the other you don't, that goes to each student. Anything that's specific to them, they will get that. If it's a permission slip, if it's, but anything that is households, here's your food service lunch application, your, health update for, each student to have a physical, things like that. We make sure we streamline it and cut the cost on that where possible as well,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, any?
I got more.
oh.
Oh, I'm good. Do you feel, and this isn't a trick question anyway, do you feel you're staffed properly? Like, are you always working to the deadline last minute? Are you guys pretty well caught up on everything?
We are never waiting for
Okay.
work, ever. And I feel like that's everywhere though. And because we are constantly multitasking, I feel like it makes it seem like you're at every deadline. Like right now, we have things that are for the second half of the year that have already been to the buildings, the majority of it. So, if you picture, everyone is requesting things in February, March, April, May, June for the start of school. I always say, just like the teachers can't teach it in 1 month, we can't print it in 1 month. We need time. The machines, the equipment only run so fast. Humans only work
Do you-
so fast.
Do you have pretty good set, deadline, drop dead dates? Like say, okay, listen, schools, if you guys want planners, I need it all by this day.
We usually do.
That, is it pretty well followed or?
Not this year because
Well,
of the
yeah,
unknown.
this year, of course,
And
is crazy.
there are so many moving parts, so you have to assume the actual student calendar being approved by the board, being approved by, by everyone. The New York State Regents exams being released, the New York State 3 through 8 assessments, when are those? Each PTA, which is what normally goes in the district calendar, so, I mean, again, it didn't this year because of COVID, but on the inside of each month is usually school by school, the district as a whole, and, district music, things like that. So we're waiting for all of those conflicts to be discussed between buildings. So if you have something at Allendale and West L, you want to talk about that because of parking and, arriving, and sometimes when you build that calendar, things change. Staff changes, food service, cost of lunches changes. So there's so many variables that, we might be waiting on a page or waiting on a change, health information, any parts of those, which is really kind of a collective in all of the materials that we produce, because we like it to be personalized to the district. Because I always say, you keep this, this is one thing that you're going to keep all year. You might not keep that, yearly update or that single page student calendar, but this is something that you're going to have hopefully on your fridge or somewhere the entire year. So for it to be as accurate as possible makes sense. So we will, cut to the closest deadline we can. The cover is always printed relatively early. Things don't often change there as long as it's approved. There's always some level of you're waiting for something to happen, waiting for a final answer. People are human and they need to proofread and they need to double check, and, there's a date that might change, and then you don't want to print it until you know for sure. And I would rather wait to print it than print it, spend the time, the money, the hours, get rid of it and reprint that page. So, I have a wonderful team. I'm very blessed. They all have very different strengths, and I'm so grateful for them. Another set of eyes, just meticulous, it's wonderful. They are very hardworking. They're always there, and I can always count on them, and I'm grateful for that. And I don't know what I would do without them. If there was 30 more of them, I'd take them. I mean, there's not many people who can run a printing press. There's not many people who can and want to. It's usually someone's grandpa who was in the Navy, or someone who did it at Hutch Tech for a half a second. So, it's definitely a skill and a trade that is not around much anymore. And we've really implemented technology in with it, which is why our costs are way lower than many places. So I feel fortunate to
Do you
be
deal
working
with
them.
interns or any of the academies, or do you deal with any where kids get a chance to see what you do? And I don't even know legally if under 18 can be in the print shop,
They can
but
probably
maybe college
be in there.
interns, anything like
They
that?
can't, nobody can run a press under 18.
Okay.
We did have a field trip, a group of special ed students with Heather Bertini. She brought them a few years ago, and they loved it. I mean, it's crazy where your strengths are. Maybe they might not be in a classroom, but they're hands-on, or, the sound, or the fun that they see in it, seeing their actual work on a shelf or on a table. In terms of the interns, because it is a situation where you are needing to know how to operate equipment, there's so much equipment in there, and all of it really is for 18 or above, but the needs aren't really there. We don't have another press. If it was somebody who said, hey, I'd like to get into printing, we don't really have a spare press running, sitting around, because they're extremely expensive, and they're running from the minute they get there till the minute they leave. But, I've always said, and I will keep saying it, anyone who ever wants to come in and see, it's a crazy operation. Being a West Seneca student myself, I never even knew it existed. And then when I went there, I was like, wow, I would have treated that paper so much better if I knew where it came from, all of the work that went into it. So, you know, anytime, pop in. Anything else? You're good?
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, so for those of you at home, if when you get those packets, then maybe you'll have a little better appreciation for what goes into making them. We just don't have the little fairies and elves that are putting them together. We have hardworking people that we really appreciate. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep. And if you walk into the print shop, don't yell the words "stop the presses." They take that very seriously around there.
do.
Just don't go
We
there.
do. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so
Rose.
much.
Thanks.
And I just have a couple of announcements. On December 2nd, we're having a policy meeting and also an agenda meeting for our December 8th meeting. So if anybody has anything that they want included in that, let me know. On December 3rd, the Erie County Association of School Boards is having a speed boarding. I think they're having presentations by most of their sponsors. And that's going to be on Zoom or Google. I don't know which one, I don't remember which one they use. But that will be a virtual meeting that they are going to have. And just a little, Dave Little does an Albany update every year. And so he was at the Erie County Association of School Boards, and a little synopsis of what he covered. The New York State population is shifting from the rural areas to New York City. So that means that our Senate districts are going to change in size, and that means that if our districts up here are bigger, they have less influence than more districts that are smaller in New York City. And so, unfortunately, that changes how we're given different state aid and how the state aid is unfortunately, somewhat politicized. So we're losing some of our political influence. Also, most of the upper positions in the state are by people that live south of the Tappan Zee Bridge. And I think, is that the one that's been named after Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo? And so that, again, is downstate, and so that poses problems for our area. So he wasn't real confident in our political future, and that in turn dictates what our state aid is. He also said that the state is currently behind by $4 billion, but there are some short-term loans that are going to be dropped off the books. So that $4 billion isn't quite $4 billion, it's less than that, but he didn't know exactly what that is, but it is a shortfall, but it's not as bad as the $4 billion. But it's still not a good picture. And he said that we should, as board members, we should start getting more involved in the legislature to, to push our points, and also if the state is going to give us less aid this year, which it could cut our aid this year by as much as 20%, that we should be looking to where we can cut our budgets now, that we can look at these. One other thing is they've been talking throughout the state with broadband. And so he said we have electrical lines throughout the state, we have phone lines throughout the state. Why can't we have statewide broadband? So just something to think about. And with the political size of the state aid, New York City, right off the top, gets 50% of the total state aid. And then the rest is divided between the rest of the state.
Yeah, I had the privilege of being there. You were on remote, weren't you? You were virtual, yeah. I never knew Dave Little to be as negative as he was this time on it, and I thought he brought up a lot of good concerns. So it's what we're facing, folks.
Yep, so we just need to be, as a board, we need to be very vigilant and really look to the next stage. There was also, and Jan, did you want to speak about the legislative meeting that was last week?
Right. That was an interesting meeting also, and it was really more or less on the same thing. We're all nervous, and we're all a little bit concerned. Our governor just isn't as favorable to Western New York, and that's the way it is. And most of the state aid and most of the privileges seem to go downstate, actually Manhattan and below, almost, you know. So that's what we're looking at right now, and we need to be really vocal. I've contacted Brian Higgins on the national scene. I've contacted our local legislators, and they all agree we need more funding, and they'll do their best, you know. But it doesn't hurt if you give them a call. You know, it's one of the offices is just over in the Southgate Plaza. I mean, some are nearby, a Transit Road, but just keep it in front of them, and that we really need it. So we have good local legislators, very good pro-education people. So they're glad to see you. They're glad to hear from you. Give them a call or even an email, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and also I know another thing that they brought up is one of the items that we found this out, I don't know, maybe September, about the transportation aid, that we wouldn't get transportation aid if students were not on the buses. So when we delivered all those
killer,
materials and meals, that there's a possibility that we might not get transportation aid. So they said start contacting your legislatures,
Right. It's a big
and just, you know, try to encourage them, because the state ed department is looking to change that part of the law, but that's not till the spring, I don't think. So and that would affect our aid for next year. And also that the teacher center funding, there's a possibility that we could lose that grant. And any other grants depending on the finances of the state. So we need to be looking at all of this information.
Yeah, Diane, the transportation aid is particularly problematic because there was an executive order that said that you had to do certain things in order to be able to,
Yeah.
you know, last year as well as this year as well. So, but there's some optimism that they're going to amend that, but we're not able to right now. I mean, the law does not permit for us to receive reimbursement or that aid if there's no students on the buses that we're transporting, so.
When you say amend that law, are they referring to it maybe retroactive?
Yes, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Well, everyone is in kind of a negative situation right now anyway, and we're just hoping for a little bit of sunshine. I think when we stop, when we can stop wearing these, when this is over, things probably will get a little better. I'm just hoping and praying, because all we heard at these meetings were negative, dire
Yeah.
things, and that was so unlike Dave Little, you know.
He usually has at least one bright spot, and
Yeah,
I
he
don't think
didn't
there were
even
any
have any
bright spots
jokes
in his
this time.
speech. Yeah, yeah.
And
just-
it looks like Mary's looking to
Oh,
speak.
Yes,
Yeah.
typical unfunded mandate, Matt, with the transportation. I figured the state would probably try to pull something, but you have to remember, you guys, the revenue's not coming into the state because
Tax.
of the taxes people aren't paying, you know.
Sales
Businesses are closed, we're not getting revenue coming in, we don't know what's gonna happen federally with revenue, so unfortunately, it's gonna come back on the school districts and the taxpayers.
Revenue's taxpayer money anyway. So,
Right.
just, I mean,
But-
it's just
but if
they're-
this
they're
pot-
taking it from this pocket.
yes,
instead of
if this pot
pocket.
doesn't have enough, this
Yeah, I
pot
know.
has to pay more, so we don't
Yep.
want
Revenue.
to.
Yep.
To do that.
I wish my revenue was taxpayer funded.
Yeah, sales tax is hurting, you know.
Yeah, that's the only
Yeah.
thing, sales tax at least is from sometimes the other country and out of the area, and people can't
No,
travel anymore,
no.
so.
Yeah.
Have our sales tax numbers drastically down?
They're not as bad as we thought they were going to be quite honest with you. They dropped initially, but we just met with Jan Lewandowski not long ago about this. They're not as bad as we thought they were going to be. They're
So
still
far,
down,
yeah.
but yeah.
You know what, Diane, I was wondering, when Dave, like you said, he was saying the population is, I thought there was a lot of people leaving the city
Yeah.
and moving.
But more are leaving us. That's what I would think.
Yeah, that's what Dave said anyways. He said more are leaving the upstate area and
And
going to
going
other
to
parts of the
downstate?
state. Not necessarily New York City, but the suburbs around New York City.
So,
I do know that they are leaving, the state too as well, moving
Right,
down south.
right. Oh, yeah,
But that's a given.
yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, it's a given. Okay, any other discussion? Anybody else want to bring anything else up for the good of the group? Okay, we're going to go into executive session. We will not be back after the executive session. And we're going into executive session for a discussion regarding proposed, pending, or current litigation. So can I have a motion to go into executive? Jody, and can I have a second?
I'll second.
Peter, and any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Aye.
Okay, and so we will go into executive, and then we'll adjourn from there. So everybody have a safe Thanksgiving, and we'll see you in December.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Thanks again, Rose.